Okay, well, welcome to week eight of introduction to corrections. And I told you guys that this quarter would move pretty fast, and it has done exactly what I said it would. Um, we are reaching, what, 3 more weeks after this, and then one more actual lecture. So I know this is the eve of Thanksgiving, and so I'm going to just go straight to it, get everything done, and then if you have questions, you can. So I'm going to give me a minute. Let me share my screen. Let me put this up here. Okay. So now let me share my screen. There we go. All right. So you know what this is. This is the home page. And again, I remind you guys that I put the articles in here to help you out with issues like, for example, this one right here. There's one that is really good, Importance of Information Literacy, which deals a lot with critical uh, analysis or either your critical skills, and that I'm looking for critical thinking specifically in this article. But all of these are good articles to help you, so I included those and I recommended, sent the email some time ago. So now here we are in week 8. This is your rubric again that tells you uh, failing parole and what can be done. Identifies 2 or 3 top reasons. You get 10 points for that. Offers or measures suggestions for success. You get 10 points for that. And then if you don't do APA, citations and references and grammar and sentence structure, but primarily APA, you will lose 5 points. So a lot of students have fallen into that trap by not putting citations and references in their written assignments. Very important. The only written assignment that you didn't have to have citations and references was your project that you had to do for week 7. Week 7, only your interview, you had to do just have in-text citations in the body. And I've graded those, and those of you who will see, I didn't take off points for references because it wasn't required. That's the only exception. But in each of these, you need to make sure you see what's required here. You need to know the number of pages that it's required as well. And I don't include that in here, but you'll see that. So then you get down here, and I was talking about that's the module for week 7. You got one more. The course project is due week 9, which is next week, at the end of next week, a week from Sunday. So you want to make sure. And then your live lectures, you can refer to them back anytime you get ready to. So we got one more left, week 10, and that'll be the final lecture. So now let's take a look at the course calendar real quick. Okay, so here from the 20th, your reading assignment, your initial posts, which were due on, Tuesday night, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, and then your reply posts are due Saturday. I know it's a holiday weekend, but you still got to get that done, and you can do it before that. But I have some lectures that were due tomorrow to take place, but I recorded them earlier so that students can have it. So this lecture is just before Thanksgiving, so I know a lot of people aren't here for that. So your written assignment is due, and that written assignment is why parolees fail and what can be done. Tells you how many pages right there. And repeating the facts don't satisfy it. Critical thinking, what I referred to in that article, will help you very, very much so in terms of it, because you're running your papers through Grammarly to make sure that you not just providing me information of copying and pasting, or that most of your paper is not that. Okay, and then of course next week there the assignments are, and then as I said, your course project and written assignment. But your course project, your final one, will be due on the 3rd of December. The 3rd of December. Okay? This is the first Sunday in December. That is when your course project is due. Okay, so now let's look at the module. And the topic this week is parole. So again, repeating the assignments that we have here, and it explain 2 or 3 top reasons, and I already told you how many pages. Told you make sure you use APA. It's 2 pages, a minimum, 2 pages. Okay, very important. Make sure you have a cover sheet as well. Your discussion posts, we've already talked about that, and then this is, I think, the last quiz that you have, because I think in week 10 you have a final exam. But anyway, there is the quiz that takes place, and it's a 10-minute quiz, and you will basically have 1 minute for each question. So again, make sure you get that completed as well. So those are the assignments. So now let me elaborate on what the module is. So I'm going to talk about that, spending the rest of the time. Okay. So let's look at the lesson, week 8. And again, we're talking about parole. I've given the assignments. Define parole, and then we're going to conclude with a conversation with a parole officer. I'm going to attempt to play that. I'm going to take my headset off when I do that, because I'm told that you can hear it better that way. So in the meantime, let's go over. So let's talk about parole. So as you know, parole is one of the 4 things that have to do with corrections. The other 3 are jail, probation, and prison. And so parole, as you know, and the difference in parole and probation is that with probation, you don't go to jail, serve any time, and then you're out. So you're given a pass. Parole takes place after you have served some time in prison, and that you are then allowed to spend the rest of your remaining sentence on the outside under the conditions that the parole board or parole organization issues. And so it's giving you an opportunity to leave prison and give you a chance to see how you perform in society again. In other words, did you learn anything to benefit you? Are you going to go in a new direction? And so the process gives individuals a second chance, sort of, in a way, but it's like, okay, I know you owe 4 years, but after 2 years, I'm just doing that hypothetically, that we're going to let you take your next 2 years on the outside, which is good. And then there are conditions that are set up for parole that are issued at the time when you are released on parole. Most recently, the most publicized parole that took place was O.J. Simpson. It was on nationwide TV, as it was with the case in back in '94. But at any rate, the point of the matter is that if you saw that at all, you discovered that there was testimony that was given by one of the victims to indicate that they believe that OJ had served enough time and that he repented for what he did, that he demonstrated repentance, and that he was really sorry, and that he learned his lesson. And an unusual part was that the victim actually said that they would be willing to pick him up and take him. Well, those are the kind of things that happen. But usually what happens at a parole hearing, which did not happen in the Simpson case parole hearing, is that there is usually evidence to the contrary as to the victims are usually presenting reasons why the person should not be paroled. And then also there's usually a prosecutor present who represents those victims and speaks on behalf of them. So that was the difference in the unusual parole of Mr. Simpson. So, but in most cases, there would be a person who was advocating keeping the person locked up. So anyway, moving right along, then they also require that you have a parole officer, someone that you report to, someone that keeps you accountable and will need to know where you're living. You have to have a plan for where you're going to live and those kind of things. You have to stay out of trouble, of course. You probably have to stay away from convicted felons. You have to find yourself very carefully dealing with the drinking of alcohol and definitely using no drugs. I mean, not illegal drugs I'm referring to. And so those are things that, conditions. So basically, anything that will promote your return to society as a productive citizen. If you want to go to school, if you want to go to church, if you want to, be with your family, those kind of things are allowed. So anyway, when the state does that, they keep control for that period of time, and if the individual violates any of those terms, it's a possibility, not always, a possibility, depending on the seriousness of what the offense would be, that the person can be returned to prison to serve the rest of their time. So there's a number of ways parole takes place. It says parole is either discretionary, which means indeterminate sentencing, or it could be mandatory, determinate sentencing. Now, a parole board determines who and when the discretionary period takes place. So when parole is granted. If you notice, that's what happened in the O.J. Simpson case. They had to vote on, even after hearing all the evidence. The board also has the authority to revoke matters when a person violates. Like probation, parole is considered a privilege. It is not a right. And parolees, as I said, like probationers, have the right to due process. In other words, a hearing to determine whether or not they should be granted parole, or if they violate, then they have a right to to present their side of the story to determine whether or not there was a violation in the allegations that are made. It's not the same as in criminal court. In fact, it's a preponderance of the evidence. It's almost like a civil case. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt as the standard. And so when a person is in violation, they receive a copy of it, and they have a right to a defense attorney or representative, present evidence and witnesses, and so forth. And so all of those things takes place. And then a written statement as to the evidence and reasons for revoking the parole. They need to know all of those types of things. So a parole officer, the person that the individual reports to in jurisdictions, as it says here, serves the same role as a probation officer In other words, they make sure that the individual is in compliance with the terms and conditions established at the time the parole takes place. And to help them with what we refer to as reintegration, which means entering into society. Maybe they're familiar with second chance programs, or to assist them with housing and things of that nature to help them to deal with things. And so there's sometimes situations where individuals are subject to what we call intense supervision, where they have a monitor on them or other kind of surveillance. And so the parole officer, as I said, assists with employment, education, and life skills and treatment or counseling, and any other family issues that are necessary to help to give the parolee a successful finish in the time that they were sentenced to on the outside. Sometimes parolees, and this is part of an assignment that you have this week, fail. And some of the issues that cause that to take place involve lack of support or programs, housing, counseling, employment, training, and social networking to help connect them with families will help increase it. But the issues that take place is individuals, for example, you were right, many of you who said why parolees fail, because they, for example, if they have a drug problem or an alcohol problem or some kind of substance abuse problem while they're incarcerated and they're released on parole and that hasn't been addressed and dealt with, then the first thing they're going to do is go and do that, and that's going to be a serious violation of the offense. Many parolees don't do it intentionally. They will sometimes miss appointments. Sometimes they don't have a ride or the ability to get to the parole officer. They hadn't been able to reach the parole officer. And when those issues come up, there could be considered as the basis for revocation, but it is something that you'll discover that parole officers don't like to do because of the fact that their goal is, number one, to see the individual be successful. But and to help them with these points that I'm talking about, counseling them, helping them with job opportunities, training, and help them to keep in touch with family members. So that's what parole does. Now, you should be aware that a lot of jurisdictions are now doing away with parole. Florida, I was told, was one of the jurisdictions that doesn't have parole anymore. But those individuals who are in the system for parole already, they still do it, but they're not giving it to new individuals. However, one of the things that you should be aware of is that that means that there is going to be a problem on the prisons. There's already an overcrowded issue, and then the overcrowdedness will become more intense. So in Illinois, we don't have parole anymore, but we do, and the way I say it is that we don't call it parole, we call it mandatory supervised release. And what that means is that you come to a certain period of after you've served your sentence that you can petition for release. And when you're released under the circumstances where you still have the same kind of things, but we don't use the term parole officer. The point of the matter is that it operates the same way. And the idea of parole still exists in some form or fashion in all jurisdictions that I know of. So it's a very important benefit to society, and it offers, like I said again, a chance for a person to finish their time outside. Any questions? Then you can type them in the chat box, and I'll see them. If I don't see any typing in, then I'll know that you don't have any questions. All right. Now, before I get to a conversation with a parole officer, I do want to remind you that your report, your final report, you must make sure you look at the rubric. You must be able to look at the rubric that is in the course. It's on the home page, and you need to make sure you satisfy the requirements. Someone asked me, do we submit the same question and answers? Absolutely, from your interview. I've already graded some interviews. A few, not a lot, only a few have decided to submit interviews that didn't fall within the 4 categories. Remember, from day one, I stressed and emphasized that your reports had to involve one of 4: prison, parole, probation, or jail. Remember, this is a corrections course, and some came with law enforcement or police, and I rejected those and gave zeros because I forewarned in week 1 and remind students, very important. Some of you had issues with trying to get your interviews done, and I've been pretty flexible with working with you guys in terms of getting that done. There was a student in my jurisdiction here in Illinois who I actually helped that student because they reached out to me for some help, which I told them I could help them in Illinois, and I happened to have a student, I already talked about that, who was a corrections officer who was able to conduct a personal interview with that student. But the point of the matter is that what you need to be aware of is try to do your report in the jurisdiction that you're in or where you probably would end up working. So that's what I wanted to say about the course project. But I am going to grade you according to the rubric and according to what it says in the module. Very, very, very important that you satisfy those requirements. Absolutely, absolutely. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So now let's go to, and I'm going to pull off my headphones so that we
see, it's going to take a minute or so for it to come in. Let's see. I'm going to make sure that you can hear me. I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute and make sure. Okay, good. So now you can hear me. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, and now let's go into this. This is about 15 minutes. So go ahead and listen to this. And again, if you have trouble viewing it or listening to the recording, make sure you do take the time to listen to it live because it provides some very good information. So let's go on. My name is Lance Culver with the Minnesota Department of Corrections. I started with the Department of Corrections in 1995. I started as a probation officer, working with adult misdemeanors and juvenile and all levels, misdemeanor felonies, whatnot. That position for many years before becoming a supervisor release probation, mainly with adults, solely with adults. After many years before I took the position that I work in now as an supervisor release agent and CIP, child incarceration program.
And both programs are the equivalency of parole. These people have been to prison and are serving the remainder of their prison sentence in the community.
That is correct. All the clients I work with have been sentenced to prison, have served their immediate time in prison, have been released on their remaining third or supervision in the community. However, on the CIP program or child incarceration boot camp program, those individuals are released early as inmates still living in the community working off their prison sentence.
Okay. Okay. So what does that mean that you get everybody who comes out of prison?
When an individual is sentenced in the court system to prison, those individuals that go to prison are evaluated at the institution, determine their risk to public. If their risk score reaches a certain level, they are assigned to an intensive supervised release team. I am a part of that team that supervises some of the more risky cases in the state Minnesota. Those would be cases of murder, possibly all sex offenders that are significant risk to public safety, and level 2 sex offenders, level 2 sex offenders, but not necessarily all sex offenders are considered a risk to public safety. I'm also a CIP agent. CIP stands for Challenge Incarceration Program. We handle the individuals that come out of the Minnesota Regional Boot Camp. And so we have a boot camp system for early releasees who have met the criteria for early release.
But they have gone to prison in order to participate in this boot camp.
That's correct. I am a supervisor release agent now. My primary, I work mainly and only with individuals who are released from prisons.
Okay, what are the qualifications to do your position?
The qualifications to be what's called a corrections agent are a 4-year degree in corrections or an equivalent background such as sociology, psychology, also an internship of 400 hours or equivalent work such as they include precinct investigation, enhancement. We might look at other types of employment such as case manager within the institution and other case management type jobs within other social work type jobs in the state.
Is there a typical day for you?
Yes. Some days are very typical. You wake up, you get dressed, you check your vehicle, all of contact, all of our work is in the community. We operate out as a special release agent. We work out of the car. The car is set up like an office. It has a laptop. It looks like a lot like a squad car. We review the previous days or from the last time we worked current notes that were inputted on all clients. I have spent a lot of time on the to-do list that never seems to go away. And just gets longer and longer each day. Review that and then basically start setting up a contact list of the people I want to see for that day. Then load up my car, check my vehicle before I leave, and then head out onto the road.
So once you're on the road, are visits typical home because you're at their home, correct?
In their homes, workplaces, and any place that they talk to an agent about. Could be a community service site, could be a support group meeting.
Okay. So what might happen at a visit?
In a typical home contact, an agent will head into the residence, walk the residence to make sure that everything is status quo, that there's nothing out of the ordinary going on. Once that has been established, we start to work on basically the housekeeping things. What conditions have we at this point? The standard conditions, the proper request, community service treatment, things like that. We discuss those housekeeping things, and then we start looking at case management, looking at the things that the clients are interested in, looking at some of their high-risk needs and areas, start addressing some of those needs, and start to plan for the future in hopes of addressing some of the problems that have in the past in order to prevent those from being problems in the future.
Okay, so are there ever like violation issues or safety issues for you?
Absolutely. Every day is a safety issue, not only for us within the home of our clients, their peers, associates within the home, but also for us, and for a lot of people, like the people in the immediate surrounding the community. I have spent a lot of time in North Minneapolis, which I think a lot of people are aware of, very significant areas for violence. So you always have to have situational awareness in regards to what's going on around you. We are trained in agent safety training courses in order to reduce the incidence of safety issues related to not putting yourself in a position where a client has locked in de-escalation skills, because
release of offenders and some of the barriers and issues that they face. Do you see that with the population you work with?
Yes. These individuals have gone to prison with not much care to their lives. They don't have 401k, and they don't have retirement plan. They haven't had, some of them never even worked a job for any length of time whatsoever. And so when they're released, those are tremendous obstacles that you overcome. Within the institution, there are programs developed for those things, interviewing skills, job training programs in the institution. So some of that is had within the institution. The biggest problem is housing. They burned a lot of bridges into the institution, and so bridges being family, they burned up their family members, they burned up their friends, and so when they're released, they have nothing, no one. And a lot of times they'll come up here from another state to commit a crime, and so really they're stuck. They don't know where to go, nothing to do. So housing is a big issue. Funding is a big issue. That's for everybody.
Okay, and so you work with them on those issues. You help with those issues also?
I do. Not necessarily directly with the clients in regards to their individual housing needs, but we are always in search of a better housing in the areas that we supervise. That's one of our mission statements. That's one of our goals as agencies to find suitable housing for clients that we use on a regular basis. Those individuals who might have housing in the community. There are a lot of programs out there, especially in the metro areas, that are willing to help.
Okay. Touched on violations earlier, but we've talked about the violation process, and it's a little bit different than going to court. Can you talk about the hearing process and maybe your role as an agent during that process?
Agent plays a dual role in that process. Although agents in the home working with the clients to assist them in their facilitation of a better life. When it comes to a violation, in a hearing, the prosecutor, the hearing is set up typically at jail. So let's start from the beginning. If an agent comes into a situation that happens in a violation situation, an ISR agent does carry handcuffs, and at that point, makes the determination as to whether or not they're going to place that person in custody. They can do it themselves, or they can call for backup from local law enforcement, which is always advised. In most situations, with ISR, I tend to work the situation myself, because that's not been much for me so far. But anyway, when the violation occurs, the client is placed in custody. A warrant is issued for their arrest through the officer of the day. That is placed in the I typically transport the client to the local jail. At that point, we establish a report based on that violation, any other violation that may be out there. That report is submitted to Minnesota, the Department of Corrections Hearings and Release Unit, and the State Public Defender's Office. A hearing is scheduled, and those three parties come together: the client, the hearings and release officer, and the public defender. The agent is also there and acts as the prosecutor or the prosecutor. They present the evidence to show the client has violated their conditions of release. The defense attorney, of course, defends the client, and then the hearing officer weighs the decision of whether or not there's been a preponderance of evidence violated their conditions back to the institution, restructure them, or dismiss. Restructure would be adding conditions, addressing the fact that the violation find that there is a suitable cause to put either chemically in place or put other aspects in place, such as the client using drugs may be considered for a evaluation and possible for treatment for that persistent in that behavior.
So sometimes intermediate sanctions can be used instead of reincarceration.
Intermediate sanctions are agents will have at their disposal in the bill. And what they'll do is it acts like a revocation the agent will ask the client if they're willing to participate in this program, and then at that point, the client may be willing to engage in those things that we talked about in the restructure, such as further chemical dependency programming, an entity is sanctioned, that would be a loss of privileges, and maybe even volunteer to go on to an electronic monitor to address accountability issues.
Okay. And you mentioned the hearing officer. Is that like the whole board in other states?
It would be like, I think the role would be set up more in a factor of having multiple individuals at a table evaluating a person adjustment to be released from the institution. I think it's more like a judge. Really, in this particular case, I would equate it more to the judge's role. They weigh both sides of the evidence from the process that the defense attorney lays out their side story, the client lays out his information, and then the probation officer, ISR agent, lays out their violation. The hearing officer /the judge takes all that information in and determines whether or not that person is in violation or not.
Okay.
And the sanction is a resolution from that hearing officer /judge.
Okay.
It's an administrative position.
Okay.
It's on an administrative hearing.
Okay. Do you have advice for students today who are interested in this field?
As everybody knows, the community, the state is suffering significant losses of revenue, and jobs are quite fine in the field. My best advice for people who are coming in the field is volunteer. Get into the agencies, do pre-sentence investigations, do case management, work with kids, get to know people in the field. Once you're in the field, have a good idea of what it is that you want to do in the field, and be an innovator. I think 20 years from now, it might not look the same way it did 20 years ago. So I suspect what we're going to be looking at is technology, how they can bring that to the forefront, how those individuals coming into the field can be an asset to that agency, not necessarily somebody who wants to sit behind the desk all day or who wants to just collect a paycheck to do a job so that they can collect a paycheck to do the job, do what they want to do elsewhere. So those who job will really bring something to that agency that are really going to make a difference in how we see corrections in the future.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. You could see from this scenario here that was presented a number of factors that we talked about earlier in the lecture. And one of the things that we talked about is the role. And notice that the job is not a desk job. It's a mobile job, and that he indicated that the position usually involves being in the field most of the time, in your car. And so you're reaching out to individuals to help them. You also heard the educational requirements. They won't even entertain you for those positions unless you are equipped with a bachelor's. An associate's will not cut it. And they talked about psychology, or you could do criminal justice as you're doing now, or anything that gets you. So basically, those of you who are going for associates, you might want to look at the bachelor completer program to get you to finish up and get your bachelor in science degree, so that you will be able to get these positions. Notice one other important factor that was presented, and that is that it must be something that you really want to do. It's not a job. It becomes, it's like the way that I approached my career as a lawyer. I knew what I wanted to do, and I had a passion for doing it, and I did it very well. That's where I am now with teaching. I have a passion for teaching. So I love to impart knowledge and open up you guys and see wisdom go in and see production where you excel and perform above the crowd. Notice that he said that there are a lot of budgetary issues that take place, and we've been discussing that already in this course, that you have to be able to be the best of the best. You want to be able to not just be average. That's why I said at the beginning of this course, don't ask me about how you're going to see in my course. I don't answer that. I produce A and B students. I primarily like to see A students, but B's are acceptable. But the point of the matter is that you have to have a good academic background in order to be qualified enough to perform. And then once you get into and working, then you continue to do extra stuff. You continue to learn. One other thing that he pointed out is that in order to become a parole officer or the role that he called it, it's the same kind of thing if you listen to it. Not what you call it is what it is, and it still operates the same fashion. But my point being is that he talked about volunteering. He talked about working, getting internships. That's the things that we talk about, externships in these kind of fields, so that you will have the opportunity to continue to grow and move higher into the company. Be aware that employment opportunities are out there, but the ones who really end up getting a lot of the jobs are the people who've done things to make themselves known to the employers. Becoming a lawyer, I started in the mailroom of a law firm, and I was in the law firm. So that gave me a chance to be exposed to lawyers. So I talked to them. And then I continued performing well in my educational side, doing well, staying on the dean's list, and those kinds of things. So you wanna put in the work. You want to be able to perform. Notice something else he said. He talked about, it's kind of funny how this was done, but he talked about technology in the field. Well, that's here already. That's why we, as one of our transferable skills, talk about being able to be fluent with the digital systems, recognizing that technology is where we are right now. And you guys in the millennial and your group should be very well versed on that, because every one of you guys got one of these things right here, pretty much. Yeah, these cell phones, you got laptops, you got iPads, you got all kinds of ways. You know how to do FaceTime, you know how to do Facebook, you know how to do all those kind of things in social media, tweet, text, and those kind of things. The point of the matter is that that's what they're saying is important in terms of becoming a parole officer as well. So I guess that the essence of the whole thing is that you have to be aware that while you're in school, that you do perform and do well with your education. This assignment that we've given you, starting from day one, the project, gives you a chance to talk to people who are working in the field, to learn what's happening, not just from, but to see real life experience. And those of you who are you really are able to get the heart of the thing. Sometimes phone interviews, as I said, are acceptable, but live interviews is the epitome. And then some of you are already working at the places where you're doing your interview. Well, that gives you a place and move higher. So anyway, this week we covered the issue of parole. And I hope that this lecture tonight has helped you. I hope also that there's some clarity you have concerning. So I'm going to ask you if you have any questions at all, if you type it in the chat box. I have the chat box in front of me, so if you type it, I will see it. Anything? Okay, I'm Not seeing anything. Okay. All right. So that means that you have no questions. That means that you're up to speed on the assignments and everything. You have no questions for me. I'm going to adjourn this session tonight. Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy time with your family. But remember, you also just meet these deadlines. Very, very important. I remember when I was in school that it was important that I did work before pleasure. And there were times when I still had to work on holidays. Well, in this situation, that as a teacher, I have worked really hard to get ahead of you guys so that I can take off completely giving and not do anything. But be aware that on Friday, I will be returning to checking for questions and comments. Again, even if you decide on Thanksgiving, you want to text me, email me, phone me, feel free to do so. If it's a text message on my phone, I will see it because I have it on my computer with me everywhere, and I will respond back to you as soon as I possibly can. So with that, I'm going to say good night and happy Thanksgiving.